Nathi Nhleko, State Security Minister David Mahlobo and Local Government Minister Pravin Gordhan visit to the area have not managed to quell the mayhem and chaos engulfing the area as it seems. Overnight, a group of people armed with pangas and knob carries blockaded the Malamalele and Toyando Road, turning motorists back into Malamalele. This follows the burning of a fourth school earlier in the week as residents demand their own municipality. The Municipal Demarcation Board announced last Friday that the area does not meet the criteria to have a separate municipality. Now, the Limpopo MEC for Cooperative Governance, Human Settlements and Traditional Affairs, Mr. Makoma Magoropetsa, joins us in our Polokwane studio this morning. Good morning, ma'am. Thank you for joining us.
Morning, and to all the viewers and the listeners.
Ma'am, your colleagues at national level, the Demarcation Board, the provincial team, and the Mamalamele task team have engaged each other so far this week. There's also a press conference expected shortly. Can you give us a little update on that and also tell us why do you believe there's still incidents of violence marring the area?
The incidents that are happening in Malamlele, basically they are criminal elements. They are criminal elements because since we have promised the community and the stakeholders of Malamlele since last week that as both national and provincial government, we are going to continue engaging with them in making sure that we deal with the situation within the three key areas. There is issue of service delivery as highlighted by the report. There is an issue of the demarcations, which the community was not happy with the outcome of the board. There is as well the issue of the shutdown. And we've been engaging them since Monday and Tuesday as both the provincial government and the national ministers are there now dealing with that situation. Even yesterday we were there. As far as we're concerned, it's not necessarily the leadership of the task team that says there must be those criminality. There are those criminals that are taking advantage, and we must really condemn that with the seriousness it deserves, because when people have got their own challenges, no one must take the advantage and bring the criminal element in the whole process. And we are happy that since the meeting that was held by the two ministers a day before, and the meeting that we had yesterday, it is clear we do have a way forward. The way forward that says, yes, there are some service, while we have provided the service in the area, but the community is not happy, we must look at that as the minister has indicated. And we're going to make sure that we're going to start dealing with it as a matter of urgency, as both provincial, national, and local government. Secondly, the issues of the demarcation. We're happy, and the community, some of the structures are really encouraged by the notice and the request by the minister to the demarcation board to open through the Section 22, invoking of the Section 22 of the Demarcations Act, where the minister is saying, in the whole country, where there are municipalities that are not viable, we must relook at them. And Vembe as a district, we're going to relook at that to make sure that by the time we go for local government elections, we're going to ensure that we're able to deliver the services in an effective and efficient manner within the viable and sustainable municipalities.
Now, ma'am,
but then the last thing that I need to indicate is with the structures that we've been engaging, there is some where we are finding each other, that we're engaging them to make them understand where we want us to go, to say, if we're going to engage with the new process that the minister is bringing, there is no way we can engage when roads are closed, when kids are not going to school. It can't happen that way. Our plea and what we are encouraging the community to do is, one, they are supposed to be having their own community meeting over the weekend, where we expect the community to understand that government wants to engage, and we can't engage in a situation where kids are not going to school. It's almost a month now. We can't have a situation where kids are not going to school, roads are blocked, people can't do their other things.
Need to be transferred to different mortuaries before they are released to families. Criselda Lewis, SABC News, at the Waterkloof Air Force Base.
Palestinian resistance icon Leila Khaled received a warm welcome at the OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg this morning from the Minister of Home Affairs, Malusi Gigaba, apartheid struggle veteran Ahmed Kathrada, and the ANC Women's League. Khaled begins with a 10-day fundraising tour for the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement And while many have welcomed Khaled to South Africa, there still remains controversy around the Palestinian freedom fighters' visit to the country. At the end of January, we here at Newsroom were joined by the South African Jewish Board of Deputies. And this is what they had to say about Khaled's most recent visit.
Leila Khaled represents terrorism. She represents a scourge that we are all dealing with in South Africa and around the world at the moment, being frightened to go into a supermarket, being frightened to actually venture out of your house or be inside of your house because you're so scared. This is it is isolating individuals and really targeting them, innocent civilians.
Leila Khaled's first interview here in South Africa will be on this very show on Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp, February. Don't miss it. It should be a very interesting interview. We'll play a couple of these clips back and get her to respond to being called a terrorist and amongst others. Of course, just if you've joined us, Leila Khaled, Palestinian resistance icon, has just arrived in South Africa this morning. She'll be joining us live on Monday. Let's have a look at your tweets on this matter. What are you saying on Twitter? Joel Pollack says, if you stand with Leila Khaled, then you stand with terrorism, violence, evil, and continued conflict. That's very, very, very tough stance there. BDS South Africa says, Leila Khaled, it's very little to say thank you to everyone for coming so early. We're talking about our arrival this morning. Drake Gaza Siege says, anyone from Palestine is always welcome to South Africa. Leila Khaled, welcome. Yes, welcome. Now, today's picture, the picture of the day, comes from Melissa Reddy, and it's captioned that these scenes will define AFCON 2015. Such a shame, but good thing. That is our quote of the day. Of course, violence marred the second semi-final last night when the host nation, Equatorial Guinea, were well beaten and knocked out of the tournament by Ghana. It sets up a mouth-watering final. But I think is Africa's two best teams, Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. You'll find it on our channel. Let's now take a look at the front pages from around the globe. In Nigeria, the Vanguard says the Independent National Electoral Commission there says we are ready for the polls. This as the country prepares for its presidential polls that they say will not be moved and will take place on the 14th of February. Then you'll see that South China Morning Post has a front page picture of the Trans-Asia Airways flight debris that crashed into a Taipei River shortly after takeoff there. In the United Kingdom, the Times is reporting that President Vladimir Putin has threatened to split the West with a surprise peace plan for Ukraine that drew in France, but left Britain and the United States out of the loop.
I come from, I have seen poverty, I have lived poverty.
Our concern is extra lessons must be considered so we can be more educated.
The government should try and absorb as many young people into the mainstream economy.
Our country is full of a lot of youth that have suffered as a result of unemployment.
Crime is a monster that is taking our citizens' life.
Accessibility and the distance to get to the clinics, if that can be improved, that would be a great thing for South Africans.
More emphasis should take place to educate people about their human rights.
If you are working for someone else, you are just working so that you can support your family, not for financial freedom. If you want financial freedom, you have to start your own thing.
The State of the Nation address with President Jacob Zuma, 12 February from 6 p.m.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom. Now, youth issues will be in the spotlight this weekend when policymakers meet in Yaoundé in Cameroon for the Africa Regional Commonwealth Youth Ministers meeting. The meeting will provide a platform for youth representatives to prove themselves under the theme, Young People Building a Stable and Sustainable Future. Now, the Deputy Minister in the Presidency, Mr. Buti Manamela, will speak at one of the sessions at the Ministers' meeting on South Africa's youth policy formulation process. South Africa is one of the few countries in Africa with a national youth policy. He joins us today in our studio in Pretoria. Good morning, Mr. Minister. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Now, Mr. Minister, as we know, South Africa is in the midst of this national youth policy consultation process. Before we go into the talks around what's happening the weekend, how about a quick update as to where we are?
Look, I mean, we have been crisscrossing the country, engaging with young people about what their views on the youth policy is, and we've been getting, very interesting suggestions from them, ranging from how do we create employment faster, how do we support youth entrepreneurship, how do we build social cohesion, how do we stop what's happening or what happened in Soweto, which seems to be happening in other parts of the country through engaging young people. But also we have had, a lot of engagements with young people around what they think should be the role of the NYD. So it's been quite an experience, for us to get young people talking to the policy, saying what they think it should look like. So it's been quite exciting, and we think that at the end of the process, the National Youth Policy will be a completely different piece of document, which would be inspired by and shaped by and crafted by young people.
South Africa as a country, we're passionate about our youth. We engage our youth. We try and create as much opportunity for our youth as possible. It is clear from all of our policy documents. The question I want to ask you, in your engagement with youth around the country, is there a breakdown in communication somewhere in the process that maybe they speak a different language from us older folk?
There's absolutely a need for us to, continue with engagement. But one of the things which we have established and has come out is that, of course, a lot of young people believe that post-1994, this government has to do certain things for them. There are a set of commitments that government has made through various policies. But what has also come out is that young people are saying we mainly need government to open up opportunities. I mean, there are a lot of scary facts out there about the conditions of young people and the status of young people in our country. The unemployment rate, for instance, is at 75%, when it comes to young people. The extent at which young people, in fact, teenagers from the ages of 14 to 19, young girls drop out of school because of teenage pregnancy, the extent of the affection of HIV and AIDS, young people dying, particularly young black male dying because of violent acts, exclusion, dropouts from academic institution. All of those things are coming up, and I think the most interesting discussions we've been having with young people about what we regard as work. Many of us want to see ourselves being behind a huge office desk, having a tie and all of that. And I was saying in one of the meetings earlier in the week that we have to get young people, to consider being welders, plumbers, and all those sorts of professions, because some of those people earn even more than what ministers and deputy ministers earn, and that's one thing that they need to be pursuing. But we think that through that dialogue and getting young people, firstly to talk, but to get them into action, because I think that's what's important, and that's what this draft youth policy is encouraging young people to do, to not only talk talk, but also to get into action. But also, once we say to them that this is, for instance, a different NYDA which they can talk to, which they can engage with, which they can take advantage of their services. And one of the major complaints is not that the NYDA is not doing its work, but that they are not able to access its services. And that's one of the things that we think we need to tweak. But with the presidency at the center of ensuring that youth becomes a priority, that is what we believe inspires young people more to believe that there will be action, in terms of their needs, interests, and aspirations.
Mr. Minister, now you're pretty much on your way to the Regional Commonwealth Youth Ministers meeting. You're one of the keynote speakers there. Tell us, what is your expectation from this meeting, and also what will be your message?
Our expectations from the conference in Yaoundé in Cameroon is to obviously share experiences with other Commonwealth countries in the region. This is the first meeting of its kind where Commonwealth youth ministers are meeting from the continent and looking at particularly the professionalization of youth work. We talk about professional workers in a whole range of areas, but we have not really looked at professionalizing youth work. Young people out there in NGOs, young people out there, in community-based organizations, in student representative councils, basically doing work with and as young people. That would be the main topic. We are having discussions with some of the higher education institutions, universities in our country, to set up a proper qualification and program on youth work. So we're hoping to get, to learn some lessons on how it has been done in the continent. One of the youth workers in our country, in our office, has been voted as one of the best youth workers in the Commonwealth region. So it shows that not only are we going to learn, but also to exchange experiences. We will then also be talking about the National Youth Policy. When we went to and engaged with the United Nations Youth Envoy at a conference which was held sometime last year in Azerbaijan, one of the things which came out of there was that South Africa is one of those few countries where we have been having a consistent national youth policy. The United Nations and its agencies on their own made an assessment of the impact that our youth policy has been making over the years. So part of the things, and they were quite happy with the work which we've done over the last 5 to 10 years. So part of the things we'll be doing will be to share those experiences, but also to foster a process wherein most African countries get into that type of direction to develop youth policies inspired by the African Youth Charter. So essentially those are our expectations and our role at the conference over the weekend.
Mr. Minister, thank you very much for joining us today. We wish you well on your travels to Yaoundé in Cameroon. Thank you very much. That is the Deputy Minister in the Presidency, Mr. Buti Manamela, giving us a little update as to where we are with our national youth policy here in South Africa, and then also what they will be facing when they deal at this Africa Regional Commonwealth Youth Ministers meeting. Yes, it is our future, the young people. We have to invest in it, and we have to make sure that there are opportunities for all of us. And, that's the policies in place. It's for us, all of us, to make it work. Now, for, a little bit of developing news, developing story. We stay in the capital. We go back to Pretoria. The Municipal Demarcation Board, he's holding its media conference right now. Amongst the issues that will be addressed is the issue of Malamulele. Last Friday, the Demarcation Board made a ruling that Malamulele does not qualify to have its own separate municipality. The task team organized called a total shutdown of the area this week. It resulted in an increase in violence and the burning of 4 schools. Now, our reporter, Molemo Wamotoa, is attending the media briefing, and we'll cross to her live.
Questions that relate to the mandate of the board. The board, as you would know, is a constitutional institution whose mandate is informed by the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, Chapter 7, specifically Section 155, as well as the Local Government Municipal Demarcation Act and the Local Government Municipal Structures Act. The board is a juristic person and is independent, carries out its functions without any fear, favor, or prejudice. The board has the responsibility to determine and redetermine municipal boundaries throughout the country, delimit wards, as well as conduct capacity assessments for municipalities in order to advise the MECs in case of possible distribution of functions or allocation of functions between districts and local municipalities. The board has been in the forefront of spatial transformation in the country since its establishment in 1999 to defeat the apartheid spatial logic and bring about spatial justice. Since then, the board has managed to rationalize the total number of municipalities from 843 to 278 as of the current. And this process is led and guided by the criteria, principles, or factors that are embodied in Section 24 and 25 of the Municipal Demarcation Act. That is for the local municipalities, largely that are Category B, Category C, as well as Section B, Section 2 of the Municipal Structures Act, which largely indicates or would outline the criteria that are used to determine Category A municipalities, referred to commonly as metros. So that is just that in brief regarding the mandate of the board, and you'd realize that I kept on saying municipal boundaries, and that does not include provincial boundaries. I would pause here if there's any question.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Any questions on the mandate of the Municipal Demarcation Board for clarification? Can you please identify yourself?
Oh, sorry, yes, please. What I meant is, when the board was established in 1999, there were 843 municipalities in the country. And since then, those had been reduced from 843 to 278.
The question over there.
You chair, MC to the chair. I'd like to sort of like propose a way forward, because I see the Q&A, they come in between the 4 sessions that you have decided to tackle. But when I look at session 2, it might come back again to session 4. Why don't we allow the chair to run through, and at the end maybe you can allow us to sort of like take him back to either section 1 want to clarity on. That's the suggestion, MC.
Thank you very much for that suggestion. The reason we split the sessions into 4 sessions, it's because all sessions are linked to each other. So we wanted to put the whole function and the obligations of the Municipal Demarcation Board into perspective, and hopefully before coming to the most topical issue. Thank you. Can we then continue to the second session?
Okay, and I guess you realize these sessions are too small. They won't take too much of your time, just providing the background. I'm not sure if you have the fact sheets because the second session would talk to largely the criteria, and I would just love you to read through those criteria and just browse through them so that you get to understand when we keep on saying the criteria set out in section 24 and 25, that you may be able to look at those. But now, in terms of section 24, I'll start with the objectives. Section 24 outlines the objectives that time and again, when we determine or redetermine municipal boundaries, we should be guided by the objective being to ensure that the localities that we create are enabling those municipalities to be able to discharge on their constitutional mandate. Those are broader objectives. We need to be sure that we are achieving a spatial integration. We need to be sure that we are enabling those communities to benefit out of the tax base towards which they contribute. For example, if people are spending most of their life in a particular area, they commute there every day to work, they spend their money there, that is the tax base within which they should find themselves when boundaries are, in the long run drawn. So that is what it refers to by an inclusive tax base. And those are the objectives. They are a guiding pole that says whenever we create a municipality, you must make sure that these are the objectives that will be realized. They are long term, but they should be guiding whatever we do. Now, coming to the factors that we take into consideration, you'll realize that they are, on your fact sheet, there will be about 12 factors that should be considered. And I'll not talk to all of those. You can read for yourself, but you can see that the interdependence of people, economies, and communities in there, referring to issues like the transport network, the commuting patterns of these people, where do they work, where are they employed, where do they spend their money, the industrial and commercial linkages, for example. Issues of spatial and settlement integration, unfragmented settlements, that's what we should strive to achieve. Issues like financial viability, that is an area where you would test the capacity of a municipality to be able to generate revenue, own revenue, to finance their activities, or are they going to just become other municipalities like others that are fully dependent on grants? We know that municipalities are dependent on grants, but to varying degrees. But there are those that are almost 100% dependent on grants. So those are some of the criteria. The last one there being the rationalization of the total number of municipalities to in the long run achieve a more efficient units or localities that we call municipalities. So those are the criteria, and as you would see, the Act says all of those must be taken into consideration. So those are the criteria that guide how the board would conduct itself, and as well as towards decision making as to whether this will become a viable municipality or not. So that would be the criteria, and this is about municipal outer boundaries. There are other criteria that are.
Well, that was the Municipal Demarcation Board coming to you live from Pretoria. Their press conference is ongoing. Our reporter, Malema Motoa, will be giving us an update in our later hours here on this very channel. And I can tell you there has been some developments in the story. The people of Malamulele have come up with a decision just now. Let's get an update from Katrine Milan on that.
Well, hello, yes, thank you. Malamulele residents have temporarily suspended their protest action and services shut down until Sunday. Residents will then hold a meeting to decide on whether to continue with their campaign or not. Malamulele residents are demanding a municipality separate from Thulamela. Business operations and provision of government services, including schooling, have been shut down for 4 weeks. 4 schools and a government warehouse have been torched, allegedly by protesting residents. Government has given assurance that it will continue to render necessary support to survivors and families of the Nigeria church tragedy. The last 11 South African victims of last year's Lagos church collapse arrived in South Africa earlier this morning. They were killed when the guest house of the Synagogue Church of All Nations in Lagos collapsed on September 12th. More than 80 South Africans were among the 116 people who died. And the number of new Ebola cases has risen for the first time this year in the past week. Health officials recorded a jump of 124 new cases of the deadly virus over the previous 7-day tally of 99. It's the first time all three of the worst affected countries, Guinea, Sierra Leone and Liberia, recorded an increase at the same time. Concerns have also been raised in light of a looming funding shortfall and the approach of the rainy season that will hamper aid efforts from April. Remember, all those top stories and more are all available on our Newsroom Facebook page. We're then also keeping you up to date on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, back to you.
Thank you, Katrina. As Africa's biggest football tournament being held in Equatorial Guinea comes to a close on Sunday with the Elephants of the Ivory Coast facing the Black Stars of Ghana, AFCON coaches and players have condemned the violence that broke out in Malabo last night. This during Ghana's 3-0 demolition of the host Equatorial Guinea in the Cup semi-final. Play was suspended for close to 35 minutes as unruly home fans were throwing missiles onto the pitch. Now, the closing ceremony will start at 9 p.m. that is Sunday night, followed by the much anticipated final between the two West African giants. At stake, of course, the honour of being crowned 2015 African champions. Ghana have not won the tournament since 1982, despite making the final 4 times in the last 4 AFCONs. It's Ivory Coast's second final in 3 tournaments. Their coach, Renard, was the coach of Zambia, who defeated the Elephants 8-7 on penalties. Now, our soccer analyst, Solomon Izang Ashams, is in studio with us here to talk about this. But let's start with what happened last night. Is this tournament now in danger of being remembered for what happened last night? There were certainly very ugly scenes and unprecedented that a match had to be stopped for so long before being really called off. Should it have been called off?
I think it should have been called off. It's really shameful. As an African football fan, it was very shameful for me. It's a huge disgrace for African football. Especially you have these incidents happening in the semi-final of a tournament. It's not really a good reflection of African football. These are situations or incidences that you see in the 80s and the 90s, but not in 2015. You know, and I thought Equatorial Guinea was doing so well as an emergency host, but until the semi-final, the fans, football is really all about friendship. And we have to not miss the point of football and sports in itself. We have to really try to really engage each other and really celebrate each other. The Ghanaian fans were being sent, missiles were sent on them. The players during halftime, and I thought the security was going to be beefed up. But I blame CAF partially for the incident.
There we're starting to see pictures now of what happened. At some point, I was really fearing for the safety of the Ghanaian players, especially because it was touch and go whether they were in real danger there last night.
Yeah.
How do you view that, and what kind of sanction would you think would be appropriate in this case?
You see, first I thought maybe the game shouldn't have gone on because the game was supposed to be stopped. The match commissioner and the referee were supposed to look at the game and stop it. After 75 minutes, FIFA rules said you stop a game, and waiting for 35 minutes before continuing, that's a long time. Yeah. But I feel the football fans, the stadium, and also the team, Equatorial Guinea team, needs to be some sort of fine and suspended. This is not an example. I don't remember the last time it happened in African football.
Well, let's get on with the positives, Solomon. Let's look at the board here and the road to the semi-finals. When you were here at the start of the tournament, I said Ivory Coast was going to win and that Yaya Toure was going to be the player of the tournament. Do you remember that?
I remember that.
Okay, thank you. Well, am I still on track or what?
You're still on track because we've seen Ivory Coast. They started very slow in the group phase, scored just a few goals, got a lot of draws. But then, as soon as they hit the quarterfinals, they showed what they're capable of. They've scored six goals already in the semifinal and the quarterfinals. And I feel we're beginning to see a different Ivorian side. Maybe the coach, Javier Reina, has been able to really blend a team, not just of talented players, but a team of really great players. And the most important thing is players like Yaya Toure, Wilfred Bony, we didn't see them performing in the group phase. Yeah. But big players normally come alive when you go to the knockout phase, the quarterfinal, the semifinal. Yeah. They carry you through to the final. And I feel they are really, they deserve to be in the final. And they are definitely one of my favorites to really lift the cup.
You can tell pretty much a similar story about Ghana. They were in the group of death with us.
Yes.
So it didn't look like much the first couple of matches. I thought they looked disjointed and at times unbalanced and at odds with themselves a little bit. But once they came through it, and it says a lot about playing in the group of death. If you come through the group of death, you normally go on and play well in the knockout games.
Yes, anything can happen once you're out of that group. Normally, when you have a group of death, you're definitely going to have one of the teams from that group making it all the way to the final. And Ghana, for me, every game is just they keep getting better with every single game. And some of their players like Andre Ayew, Samoa Jeng, they've been able to perform. We've seen the way Wakaso has been playing, and which is really great.
I want to look at the influential players on Sunday. You mentioned Andre Ayew. He hasn't had the greatest starts to the tournament, but he's the kind of player that also on the big stage he always seems to excel. He gets that extra 10% that it takes to change a game.
Yes, he's a big moment player. You know, his dad played in the 1992 final when Ghana lost to Ivory Coast in Senegal, and so now he's going to be coming in here as captain. Maybe if Samoa Jeng is not there, he's got 3 goals. He has created 4 goals. So he's a player that, you know, playing for Marseille, coming in. He's been known to come in with big temperament and really carry the players with him.
The guy, we've also got a profile up of Yaya Toure that you spoke about briefly a little bit earlier. Doesn't always get the plaudits, I feel, in Africa for what he does. You know, his national team, they say, oh, he's never really played that well for the national team. But if you look at the spine of this team, he's going to have to really step up and put in a performance on Sunday night.
Yes, definitely. I think if Ivory Coast, the Elephants, are really going to win this one, they really need to see a player like Yaya Toure really coming up. I feel he's had a good tournament so far, the way that he really command the midfield and also attacking, and the wonderful goal that he scored against the DRC in the semi-final. But the final is a one-off, 90 minutes. And big players like that, this is a huge opportunity for them. He's the African Footballer of the Year, and he still has a lot to prove. And I think the final will be a perfect ground for him to do that.
So you're changing a tune. You're picking Ivory Coast to win the final now.
I'm trying to follow you. On current form, I think they're slightly a little bit better than Ghana.
I'll pick them as well. I'll pick a 3-1 win for Ivory Coast on Sunday night. Solomon, you can call me and send me a Twitter message on Monday and abuse me if I'm wrong. But I just had a feeling that Yaya Toure has had enough of the abuse that he's been getting from all of us here on the continent, really, that, you know, only plays for money in the big clubs in Europe and never does it on the international stage for his country. Well, it's going to do it this weekend. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
That's Solomon Izanga Shams, who's a man who knows a little bit about African football, and that's where we wrap this week. Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. The show repeats at 2 in the afternoon with a rebroadcast then at 5 a.m. the following day. We're also live on YouTube during the entire time in the morning, with the show available later on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.
Scientists are confident they have found the source of the outbreak, a bat colony in southeastern Guinea. Meanwhile, a U.S. drug manufacturer has announced that it has started clinical trials of an experimental Ebola vaccine.
And this is the first examination in the country to have that high level of quality. And for us as a province to be number one is indeed exciting.
Another test victory. Victory number 2 in this series, punched away for 4.
Brent crude oil that we import for our fuel falling below $50 a barrel today. Now that's for the first time in about 5.5 years.
The Lagos skyline is a static scene, but on the streets of Nigeria's capital, change is afoot. This is now Africa's biggest economy.
For all your business news, stay tuned to your favorite channel, SABC News, at 1 Monday to Friday.
Eskom could miss a deadline for a crucial step towards turning on the Medupi power station. But the power utility says it will probably meet the December the 24th deadline.
We're looking good. We've come through 3 days, obviously, of load shedding, which has unfortunately been necessary, but it's been useful to have built up our reserves for the coming week.
Shares of private hospital group Netcare jumped up today and closed on a high after the company reported increased annual profits.
The hospital group is also taking steps to aggressively reduce its dependence on Eskom due to increasing power outages and rising costs.
We'll be reducing our energy needs by some 35% over the next 10 years, and our cumulative savings of our forecast electricity bill will be in the region of R1 billion. So we're doing something very constructive about the challenges we're facing at the moment.
That's business news, weekdays at 6 p.m. on SABC News.
Where I come from, I have seen poverty, I have lived poverty.
Our concern is extra lessons must be considered so we can be more educated.
The government should try and absorb as many young people into the mainstream economy.
Our country is full of a lot of youth that have suffered as a result of unemployment.
Crime is a monster that is taking our citizens' life.
Accessibility and the distance to get to the clinics, if that can be improved, that would be a great thing for South Africans.
More emphasis should take place to educate people about their human rights.
If you are working for someone else, you are just working so that you can support your family, not for financial freedom. If you want financial freedom, you have to start your own thing.
The State of the Nation address with President Jacob Zuma, 12 February from 6 p.m.
Street culture is most definitely defined through one's individual style, be it through music, lifestyle, and fashion. Live Magazine has been in existence since 2010. It is a youth-run media channel covering a range of topics from fashion, politics.
We need, and there's a huge gap in South Africa, skilled museum personnel, such as collections manager, restorers. That is a gap.
Pattern of contact includes the 14th century Chinese world map. This is one of the oldest surviving world maps, titled Da Ming Hun Yi Tu.
Join Musam Khalifi on Afro Showbiz every Saturday at 19:30 CAT.
The rolling hills of KwaZulu-Natal are home to a great story of the Zulu nation. The epic story of Ushaka was told in movie form 29 years ago in this exact spot of Shagaland and preserved in the form of a living museum dedicated to the stories of the Zulu people.